Good morning. I want to talk a bit today about how we actually have weird ideas, who we're working for, and actually what we're doing with the open web. Because I mean, it's a Web Unleashed web conference, and I've been here for a long time trying to fight that good fight. And recently, I learned a lot of things that assumptions that I made were wrong. So I was just looking into that, and I find it exciting to reconsider our ways, how we want to do the right thing and give it out to people, rather than like being in our ivory tower and keep saying that the web is great and then being angry that people don't care. So who am I? I'm Code Poet on Twitter. My pronouns are he, him, his. I'm a principal program manager. I'm a member of the W3C on the machine learning group there. I've been 20 years a web developer, and I worked for eToys, Agilysys, Yahoo, Mozilla, things like McDonald's websites, HP Europe, a lot of portals for the government kind of thing. And then I worked on Firefox OS, worked on Yahoo Maps, and now I'm at Microsoft, having worked on the Edge browser, and now on the new Edge on Chromium Browser. I've written 3 books. I contribute to about 10 books. If you want to make money with computer books, that's not how it works, but it's actually really good for your parents to shut up because they didn't know what I was doing. So the first time I wrote a book and gave it to them, they basically, every time somebody came to visit them, they showed the book. That's what our son does, and I didn't have to explain anything anymore. So that's what it's really good for. And I blogged since 2004, and I'm kind of loud on Twitter, but not the angry loud, but basically just like lots of stuff. So people block me because I tweet too much rather than I tweet horrible things. And yes, the slides are available, because that's the main question every single time you give a talk. Apparently this is a QR code that the Canada people from Microsoft gave me. I don't know what's behind it, so hopefully it's not something horrible. But that's where the feedback stuff happens. And I've been working on a lot of things in my career as these 20 years developer. I started with websites, of course. That was a really cool thing. I built an HTML website in 1997 as the first thing for myself, and then for a solicitor in my hometown that basically asked me to have one of those. And when I built it for him, he asked what's the telephone number where I can reach it. So I had to explain a bit what the web is to him after he paid for it, but okay. And then BMW found me because of that, and I started working for them on the intranet, because I was the HTML guy, and it fascinates me that this was still a thing. So I've never been to university. I don't have any job education finished. I just was randomly happy at the right place and the right time, and be basically wanting to learn it. So from there I moved on to e-commerce templates, because that was the cool thing back then, like Intershop and these kind of things. And then to portals, where I built things like the Yahoo front page and also some other big portals in Germany. And then developer products, because we started to think about like how do we make it easier for developers to get hired by our company. That's why in Yahoo we did the Yahoo user interface library to realize like, okay, we make the web better with that, but we also get developers to hit the ground running once they actually come in, because they already know what the things are there, much like React works for Facebook as well now. And then I started working on a browser, and I thought like this is where the web needs to be fixed, because everything else didn't work out for me. And then I actually now start working on developer tools, because I realized this is maybe where the web can be fixed. And the fun thing is that it's never been simple. All of it has always been a struggle, and mostly a struggle with technologies there, open technologies there, and then people happen, you know, and disagree with you and want to have things differently. And it's kind of weird, because whenever we talk about in these very romantic talks that we give at these conferences about how beautiful and unbreakable the web is, we always talk about the beauty of the web technologies as they are right now. And the first one, that they're decentralized. It's not only one company running the web. It's independent of platform and device. You don't actually need to have a Windows machine or a Mac to actually use things. It's accessible to all. That's what the web should be. Like as a blind user, I should be able to use these things. As somebody who doesn't speak a language, I can actually translate websites for myself. And actually on a really terrible connection, I should still get something and not just wait for like 50 minutes and look at a spinner. And it's a low barrier to contribution. We always get very excited to say like that anybody on the web can be also a producer or a creator of content. And that's something that was actually my career, that I was able to do that I set up a blog and people found me that way. But now you set up a blog and there's like 6,000 spam blogs created every second as well. How do you stand out from that any longer? And its ability to own your communication channel, to not like Facebook can block me for saying something terrible or something good as well. And I'm on my own blog, nobody can do that. It's totally fine to be yourself there. It's standardized and open platform technologies, and that was a big thing at the beginning when it wasn't standardized. The first few years of my career was actually knowing how different browsers do things wrong and how to work around that. And that was just not scaling, actually, as a career. And it's the sum of human knowledge. We always get super excited to talk about Wikipedia, about like how Wikipedia would be impossible to pay for, because nobody actually would have got given that much effort and work for free. But as the end result was free again, people were happy to contribute. And that actually brings us to, gave us these values that we keep harping on about on stage at conference like that as well, like that everything needs to be open and free, that everything needs to be read and write, that everything needs to be editable all the time, that it needs to be inclusive and accessible, publicly available, based on open standards. And this is all great. These are all very important topics, and I'm totally standing behind them. But sometimes we get a bit militant about that stuff and think about like telling people off for doing something not the way that we think. We love our choice as well, so we want different browsers all the time. We've got lots of add-ons. Actually, Firefox success from the very beginning was that you had add-ons and you could extend the browser to something you do. For us as web developers, we had like Firebug, and we had before that the web developer toolbar. Without them, we wouldn't be where we are right now. Like the browser itself didn't come with these tools, but the extensibility of the browser gave us that space that we're in right now. And they had different editors and different form factors and platforms, and also different abilities. Like, again, we have to think about developers as humans as well. So when our developer tools are not capable to support somebody with a color deficiency, or a blind user should be able to be a developer. But sometimes we don't think about these things. But the web is a roaring success. There's actually nothing we actually won. We don't have to repeat these things any longer because it is actually there and is a massive success. It's hard to imagine a world without the World Wide Web right now. It's really, I wouldn't be able to think about it anymore. TV is unnecessary. We do streaming stuff in a browser or in an app, and the app uses the web under the hood as well. Web technologies are standardized, and browser differences are kind of negligible these days. We don't have the like Netscape does this, Internet Explorer does that, Safari does that. Even Safari has like people at conferences now that talk about how their browser works, and traditionally they've been a very closed company and very successful with it. And open source has matured from a niche to a technology that runs the web. Like, I mean, there's no question that most of the cloud stuff is on Linux. There's no question that the best developer tools are open source right now. And documentation is plentiful, free, and interactive. MDN, I worked on that one for a few years. It's just wonderful that you don't even get the explanation, but you also get like a clickable thing to work with. Things like Glitch, CodePen, JSBin, all these things are great to actually share with other people and code together and do explanations while you're making it interactive, rather than like, here's a 10-step plan to follow and then you got stuck halfway in between. So the question is now, like, why is it all kind of a mess? Because if you look around the web right now, the state is kind of sad. There's a blatant lack of accessibility. WebAIM just did this like 1 million most important websites, and simple things, you know, like buttons without any text on them, labels missing or form fields, not enough contrast between two elements, things that can be automated, things that can be tested, is not being done. And security problems, of course, the same thing. I mean, doing a target blank on a link right now without a no referrer or something means that you actually give access to an attacker to your website. Performance issues, the amount of slow websites out there that use lots and lots of RAM on your machine is also painful to see. And a need for blockers to keep the web safe and a lot less annoying. I mean, we're doing a lot of tracking protection right now, and of course everybody runs, or most people run, some sort of ad blocker because the web is just unusable without it. I mean, there's like, whenever I scroll, there's some pop-up video playing. That makes no sense. We actually took this web and we made it wrong. And when we talk to people about reasons for that, there's many of them. I'm not going to read them out, but this is like feedback that I keep hearing, that everybody has somebody else to blame why the web is in that state, why it's not really as beautiful and as successful as we think it should be. And this is the thing where I think we're running in circles, and we should be do a bit of navel gazing and thinking about something differently. I don't know if you know about that person. That's called Abraham Wald. And he was a statistician. That's a really hard word to spell. And he actually kind of changed the outcome of World War II. You know, when the main reason to deal with Nazis was to fight them, not to upvote them on social media or vote for them. Because one thing he found out was a thing that later on became a bias that we define, and that was a research about aircraft coming back from the field. So they looked at where the bullet holes are in aircraft that basically were shot really badly and just made it back to the degree. And then they're like, okay, where do we fortify them? Where do we put extra metal on there? Where we make sure that actually the machines are safer? And everybody, of course, was like, yeah, well, they were peppered. Like the outer wing needs to be better, the inner cockpit needs to be better. But then he pointed out that there's one very, very stupid mistake in that thinking, because the aircraft that came back that they could actually analyze were the ones that survived. The ones that got shot down were the ones where the bullet holes weren't. So in this case, to fortify that plane, to make it safer, you actually put the padding where there is no bullet holes, because this is where they got shot down. So where the whole wing would be cut off, or the back section as well, that would spiral that plane down. And we kind of do the same thing. We're always like, this is not accessible, that's why it's terrible. And it's like, instead of asking like, why is it not accessible? What happened? How can we make it easier for people to think about that right thing? So pointing out the obvious mistakes in products is a very easy thing to do, and it makes you feel good. But helping the people not making that mistake is probably a better way of dealing with that. Or as I keep saying in meetings, like, let's stick to the ratio. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. And maybe we should spend more time listening to what people are doing and looking at what people are doing and less talking. And I know the irony of saying that on stage in front of a conference. That's not lost on me. But I think it's very important that when you really want to build something good, you have to listen to your users more. Now, I'm in the middle of a launch right now of revamping Microsoft Edge on Chromium. And you can download it there. It's like in 3 different formats and these kind of things. And it's great for me because I came from Firefox, I came from open source, and I'm going back into like contributing to a massive open source project. And what we do there, and what I love about this, and this is not a pitch for my company, I'm just very surprised that we do it, is that we're actually putting user needs over opinions a lot right now. So we have this new framework of reaching out and building products, but that have like several rounds of user testing and user interviews before we actually put the first feature in. So instead of making up a feature that does something, we come up with a hypothesis saying like, end users probably want to do that. And then we do user testing with people and see if they really want it, and then build it. And not waste the time building it, putting it in there and having to maintain it in perpetuity without actually anybody using it. So in this case, what I found very interesting is finding all these different users that I never thought of, being this like very privileged person working in open source on the web and being one of those cool web kids. That basically when you work for a company like Microsoft or a company like Facebook or a company like Yahoo, you meet all these users that are there in the web that you never reached, that you never understood why they are actually the way they are. And here's a few quotes that I had. I'm probably not going to read them out verbatim, but the slides are available as well, which I found very interesting to see how much of a spectrum we have with different users. So the one that we always want as developers is the keeping it current user, like the person that uses most of the time his mobile phone, because we heard at 20 conferences that the desktop web is dead and it's all on mobile, and if you want to succeed, you have to be everything mobile first. And that's one person that probably has one browser on his laptop and one on his mobile, and customizes it to his needs and keeps it up to date. And that to me is I'm very happy about that, because the only way to keep people secure and their privacy in check is to have them update their stuff all the time. Which is kind of depressing at times when it's connected to spending money as well, when like the $1,000 mobile phone that you bought last year, if you want to get that new feature, you've got to get a $2,000 phone this year. I think privacy and security should never be something to opt in with money. But it's great to have these people, and these are the people that we always talk about and think about, because we're like, oh yeah, there's a beta version of that browser out, probably people are using that already. Well, there's a way to test this, make sure that you know that people are using it. Then there's the I'm okay with what I have user. They've been using the same browser for quite a while and they only go to a few websites each day. Most of the time they get stuck in Facebook and don't do anything else the whole day. And it annoys them when they have to upgrade their browser or when websites change all the time. They don't need new features, they just want to do their day-to-day work and go on the internet. And that's totally fine too. And it's fascinating how often we're frustrated by users like that. Like, but your life could be so much better if you just would see the world like I do. And they don't, because they got other things. They got kids, they got a dog, they got a job that they're actually loving, and they're just using the web. Others just go online. They use the web for work, and they're on their work computers, and they have one predefined browser, and they can't even do anything about that, and they don't even care, because probably in their free time they only use their mobile phone to play some games and go on Facebook and talk to friends. But the internet is something that they do at work, and the IT department sets it up for them, so they don't even want to understand what the open web is about, and us barraging them with like great ideas what they could be doing on the web is just completely lost to them. Then the cautious users, they don't trust the web, they hear all kind of horrible things, so they have like 5 ad blockers running and 3 virus scanners and wonder why their computer is slow. And those are people that are not comfortable with anything new that you actually give them. So when you say like, oh, this website needs you to turn this on, they're like, nah, I'm going somewhere else, because this is not my job to do. I like them because they actually, at least they don't click on random things and trust everything. But of course, for us, it's tricky to get some new functionality out to users like that. And then my favorite is the Stockholm Syndrome user, which is like people that have been using bad interfaces and terrible setups for so long that they actually start defending them. You know, they have like upload facilities that need like 3 steps and 5 buttons to press, and it costs them like 10 minutes of their day every morning, but those 10 minutes they already accounted for. They don't want to think about it, they don't want to have a better interface, they don't want to have something cleverer, they just want to go through their motions every single day and do that. And they start defending horrible functionality because they don't know any other. And that kind of research led to somehow some bitter pills to swallow for me. So to different users, a browser is different things. For us, it's like the browser, oh, evergreen, we got to have a new browser. People use this. It's so sad that they don't use the newest one. A lot of people don't control the browser. They don't know what it is. They just have an icon that they click on and gets them to the internet and opens their bookmarks. They don't even know that they have a choice to do something different. They also, others is something they cherish and highly customize. People don't choose a browser because of the technology it is, but because how much it actually makes their life on the internet easier, by translating websites for them, by recording their passwords and making it easy to fill in passwords fields, by having their history in there and having their social presence in one browser so they don't have to log into different websites all the time. So it's much more important, the services around the browser, than the browser itself. For many of them, it's irrelevant, as they work okay enough. I don't care if there could be a better browser, this does what I want. And nothing worth changing their habits for. Like, okay, cool, I could use Firefox, but then I have to change my habits to actually do that kind of thing. Why is it there? And I think there's kind of a lethargy and trust in higher powers to ensure security and privacy. When you do, we do a lot of interviews lately about privacy and like what you do to stay online, and they're like, well, the operating system does that for me. I hope that the browser does it for me. I feel safe. I mean, you find these interesting things where like, I hate that Facebook actually spies on me, but at the same time, I find it really useful to log in with Facebook and other websites. And you know, there's no insight at all in what people are doing. They just hope if it's a big company and a big name, it's going to be safe. I think the times have changed, and we haven't in our trying to sell the open web to people. The web is not a cool new thing. We're not the disruptive kids any longer that are going to IT conferences where like, ooh, the web track, this is where something new happens. It's kind of akin to plumbing. And I don't care about plumbing in my house. I just hope the water comes out clean, and I only think about it when it doesn't come out. I don't know how plumbing works. I don't want to know most of the time where the stuff goes. And that's the same thing that people have with the web right now. The shiny fixtures are mobile devices and smart products. This is like where cool stuff happens. Like, I love that my computer talks to me and like, okay, Google, let's talk about privacy. And everybody's mobile phone goes up and they don't know why it's actually working. So whenever we talk about owning the platform and becoming a maker of the web and not only a consumer of the web, it's an interesting one as well, because it was never as easy to get a domain in hosting. It's super easy right now. Like, every provider has something for you. There's Media Temple outside. Lots of CMS and static page generators. Like, you don't even need to know HTML. You can actually build a website with like Wix or Squarespace and those. But the problem is, like, as soon as you put something online, there's a massive amount of spam and malware attacks and the maintenance of it. You have to keep updating the thing to keep it safe, because any WordPress installation of the web is a potential attack vector where you can host Bitcoin miners if you wanted to. There's also legal demands, GDPR and cookies. Out of a sudden, as a publisher on the web, I have to think about those things as well. And there's also closed platforms that offer better features. Like, many times I go to little clients and they're saying like, okay, shall we build a website for you? And they're like, no, we put it on Facebook, and WhatsApp is where people find us. And it gives me the statistics, it gives me the ads, it gives me everything built in that you would have to piecemeal put together on the web. So a fix to the web, I think, seems to be somewhere else, rather than like trying to convince end users that the web is theirs to use and the web is theirs to actually define. So it might be up to us to fix the web as people excited about it, and it means taking ownership and caring for the needs of different constituencies, and not only think about like our little world where it's like, I've got new developer tools for you that are just beta and probably you can't use next week, but isn't it exciting that we're doing something new? We can't expect users to care enough to fix the web. So the next thing we thought about, like, how about we empower developers? Because every developer actually has users that talk and listen to them and trust that person to actually give them something cool off the web. Again, research showed me there's many, many different developers that we don't think about in our outreach most of the time. This is a job developer. That's somebody that basically their computer setup and their tool setup is defined by their company. They know that there's better things out there. There are most exciting things out there. But as they don't get to use them at work, why should they bother? And not everybody wants to do their hustle-free side job in their free time. They just have a job. They get paid for that. I'm using this editor. And this is things that have fascinated me. I talked to a person that ran the websites of 12 different hospitals. And her workflow was basically Dreamweaver and FTPing the websites up to the thing. And that was in 2019. I didn't even know Dreamweaver was even maintained. But yeah, basically, old installation, I just changed these words, pressed them, FTP it over, done. Then there's the switched on developer that actually they are frustrated that people have older browsers and computers, and they actually tend to normally get into the library space right now because they want to learn about new programming features or paradigms rather than how browsers are actually messed up. So the whole like, oh, functional programming is something that I want to do, or web components, I need React or Vue for that rather than the web component standard kind of thing. Then there's developers that are just there to deliver. They have clients that don't pay them for extra fancy new technology. They just have a fixed budget, and he's like, why should I give them more? Why should I understand about these things? I need to actually build something that's stable, maintainable, and legally compliant, so accessibility is important to them. And again, most of the time, they reach out to a framework to do that stuff for you rather than learning it themselves. Then there's the grumpy old developers that basically say like that the web is generally broken because C++ is so much better, and rich UI environments like Ball and C Builder is something that I learned my programming with, and the web seems like a mess, and I don't want to spend time trying to guess what the outcome of the code is. And then the most frustrating one to me, or like heartbreaking one to me, is like new developers coming into the market right now and being overwhelmed by the kind of information they get. Instead of like having they come from a boot camp and then they go on the wild, wild web and everybody tells them something different, contradicting advice as well. Or just like, oh, just use React and everything will be fine. So no, I want to learn, I want to set something new. So the research I found there is like the caring developer that we actually think about, basically people who come to these conferences, is a tiny fraction of the market. It's not actually multiplying the way we think by impressing developers we get better users and better products. For many, this is a job to make a living. And that's, I mean, we're like 40 years old as IT. We shouldn't be surprised by that. There are people just in there that just to make a living and not run the show or have their voice heard. So new developers don't find an empathic open world, but an avalanche of choice and opinions. And this is like the angry mob that we portray on Twitter that we should be not doing. And satisfying developer needs has no direct correlation to creating better user products. That's what I've really found, sadly enough. So why learn the basics? Browsers can't break the web, their forgiveness knows no bounds. We're not allowed to break the web, so any old crap that people put like on the web 20 years ago still renders. Any terrible mistakes you make in your HTML, the browser still makes something out of it, and that's defined in the standard. So if it works, why bother learning why? And we don't have empathy for that, but I understand it. Like, you talk to people who just use React, and they're like, I don't care if it's 6,000 divs, it works, right? And I can do something else next. So if it doesn't work, there's an ample of resources to learn quick fixes. And of course, people go into abstractions that way. So learning the web isn't a desirable skill, because if you're looking for jobs right now, you have to have the abstraction words in there, like, oh, I'm a React full stack developer with 12 years of Vue experience, which doesn't exist, but fair enough. And abstractions promise faster turnaround and great products. Big companies use them, like, oh my god, React is used by Facebook, so your website can scale to the size of Facebook too, right? Maybe not, probably not, but it's the big marketing thing around it is fascinating. So to me, tech innovation isn't the answer any longer. Constant change in developer space is a double-edged sword. We empower a small group of highly motivated people at the cost of overwhelming others. We look like, oh, cool new feature, and most people, I didn't even touch that feature yet before the next blog post came out, like, don't use this because it's dangerous. We innovate to fill a need and call it a success because it's new instead of solving real problems. We just like, oh, we got a new feature in it, that's excellent. And we don't find out about real problems as we don't ask people outside of our bubble. We actually don't want to know about these 9-to-5 developers that work for an insurance company, and we definitely don't want to know how insecure our insurance company's website is because of that. So what can we do as web lovers? I think the big one is we have to stop with the absolute. The do or do not, there's no try, is a very, very stupid way of dealing with kind of things like, oh, you got to be accessible or you're a terrible person. Okay, this is not accessible because of this and that reason. So the needs of all these developers outweigh our needs, and I think that's a very important thing, that we see ourselves as a delivery service for people to do the right thing or not do the wrong thing. Sometimes you have to take functionality away from end users so they can't shoot themselves in the foot. So focusing on delivery and something that is mostly not a technical thing is something that I started to talk to people about. So when we think about like, what do we need on the web as a must for our end users so they can be safe, they can be secure, what is our job as developers to make sure? And I think availability is the first one. If the thing doesn't load, if it takes too long to load, then there's no point having it on the web. Accessibility, again, if I can't use it because I don't have the certain mobile phone, or if I can't use it because I just can't see different colors, that's again a complete showstopper. Security, we cannot trust people to think about security, we have to do it for them. And mutability to user needs. An immersive reader view in Edge or like a reader view in Firefox is something that people use because websites are too complex. So if your website blocks these kind of things, you're actually putting your need above the one of your end users. Once we filled those needs, we can start adding quality, like better performance, like features that load lazily in the background while you're interacting with it rather than like having it all up front. Extended availability, offline functionality, that's where PWAs come in. Customizability, that people are actually allowed to change the website look and feel, or when they use, for example, high contrast mode, we found that 3% of Windows users, which is millions of people, use high contrast mode, and nobody thinks about that in their CSS. There's a talk coming up at TPAC next week by a colleague of mine about this, and also at the ViewSource conference from Mozilla soon. And then you create delight. That's the want that basically at the end of it. Make full use of the platform, allow them to actually do that login with like biometric data on mobile phones, with those new APIs, payments on the web, these kind of things. Predict use cases and prevent simple mistakes. That's where the machine learning comes in. You know, if people type something wrong, your machine should not be asking them to type it in again, but make an educated guess based on other users that did the same thing, that basically says like, okay, we searched this for you because you obviously meant that. And offer extended functionality. We love our tools, and sometimes we get super excited about them. We've got browser developer tools, we've got editors, extensions and themes, terminals and their configuration, deployment and optimization tool chains, abstractions, components and libraries. This is what we blog about. This is what we tweet about. Hey, I've got a new theme for the terminal. It makes me so much more an effective developer. And you're like, really? I need to change all the colors again? And the font makes you the better developer rather than like the technologies that you're using? It's all a bit much. We overwhelm people who want to start with the web or just want to do their job. We just give them so much choice and so many different fighting fractions telling you, you got to use Vue, you got to use React, you got to use that, you got to use that. 97% of the websites out there still run jQuery. and jQuery 1 point something in an utterly vulnerable state that has like 3 XSS bugs in it that haven't been fixed since 2006. Because some product uses jQuery under the hood and injects it into the page that we don't even know about. By demanding people to set up complex dev environments, we inhibit diverse contribution. I had it the other day, a single page, like an HTML page, one document, and it was using nunchucks and something else, and I was basically, okay, I followed the instructions how to contribute to it. It downloaded 150 megabyte of Node dependencies and installed it in my machine and asked me to change configuration things, so I'm allowed to actually edit an HTML page. In the end, I went to the GitHub repository, pressed the raw edit button, and edited directly in GitHub rather than installing it on my machine. And I live on a like 200 megabit connection. Imagine being a developer in Pakistan that just wants to get into the market, and the first thing is to download 150 meg for the first 3 weeks so you can edit an HTML document. Makes no sense to me. We don't focus enough on human needs in our tools. So one of the biggest hypotheses that I actually throw out right now is that our tools are too complex. Because we put everything in one, or we say do everything on the terminal, do everything in developer tools, do everything in your editor. So I'm thinking about the stack that we have right now as a mix and match thing to empower different users. So when you start with Node, it's the glue for everything that's happening in the web stack right now to me. It's basically JavaScript on the server. It enables a highly customizable web infrastructure, servers, build tools. You don't need to install an Apache any longer. You can run your own server in Node. You can actually do your own API servers in Node kind of thing. And it also elevated JavaScript from how does browser so-and-so break to a solution for all kind of web tasks. Node JavaScript development is a completely different beast to like JavaScript development in the browser. And it's great to see that we're taking this much more serious right now. Chromium, to me, is the open engine of the web, for better or worse. I would have loved to have more diversity in that, but we tried with Firefox, we tried with Edge, people did not care. Chromium was the one that won, because it was the thing everybody contributed to. So it's open source, it's multi-platform, it powers various browsers and app engines like Electron. It can be automated and scripted with Puppeteer. So what's not to love? You know, what's not to, as the open source thing is the main bit that I'm like, okay, let's contribute to that one then, rather than like trying to fight it all the time. Visual Studio Code is the hackable editor for me. I mean, I was excited when that came out and I helped rolling it out. Again, open source, multi-platform, extensible, customizable, based on Electron, so that's the tick to Chromium, and includes Git version control. I love that, because you get a new web developer coming in, the first thing is like, oh, you need to learn Git. Or you say like, look, you edited that, now there's an M next to it, you write a comment, what you changed, you press this button and it goes back to the GitHub repository without you having to know Git yet. Later on you can learn Git, but like making it a need before you can actually contribute to a project, not necessarily the best idea. Built-in terminal, another good thing, I don't have to change my context all the time, and it's lightweight and code focused. WebHint is another product I'm working on, which is a testing tool that checks web projects for accessibility issues, performance problems, app readiness, compatibility with standards, common pitfalls to avoid, security issues, and it's an online service or node package to integrate in other tools. So instead of doing this in your developer tools with like Lighthouse or something like that, you can make it part of your delivery in your company. Like every time you deploy the website, it runs all these tests for you and tells you when something is wrong. And that you don't need to know that, but somebody in your company needs to know how to set that up and make it part of your workflow. And out of a sudden, the product you release cannot be bad any longer because it has to step through these things. And it's highly customizable. So if you don't want to do the PWA tests because you don't care about a PWA functionality, you can turn that off, because many testing tools give you like the best world that that company wants you to use. So mixing and matching these tools can be super powerful. For example, you can have WebHint as a code extension. So while you're actually writing HTML and you forget an alternative text on an image, you got a little pop-up saying like, by the way, this needs an alternative text. Or your node configuration is not optimized, that actually it builds a 5 megabyte, or Webpack configuration, it builds a 5 megabyte JavaScript file where 500K should be enough. It flags that up while you're setting up your Webpack thing. Like, by the way, you said you're only supporting those browsers, why is all that other code in there? And I love that immediacy of writing code and being told that I'm doing something wrong while I'm writing it, rather than going to another tool set and then learning later on that I messed up. It's also an extension for every browser out there right now. It's for Firefox, Chrome, and for Edge, so you can actually install it as an extension and run it inside the browser and inside the browser developer tools. And you can run WebHint as an automated testing to your build process. So it's basically a node package. Again, in your CI/CD, you can say like, okay, test this before we do it. So what's next for that? For me right now, it's actually Edge on Chromium. And there's three things. There's a beta that comes out every month right now. There's a dev, which comes out every week. And there's the Canada edition. No, it's actually a Canary edition that actually builds every night. And you can play with those, and they're on every operating system out there, and it's basically a browser that right now we build on your feedback. Like, what do you want in there that makes a difference? And I think it was very important to add another powerful player with lots of users to an important part of the web, because the Chromium project had not many contributors outside of a certain company, so we actually want to bring more technology and more power into that. We've got lots of engineers that are working on the Chromium core right now, and it's quite fun to see that an open source project can work that way. We put lots of bug fixes in there, like of course a huge project has a lot of bugs. And the main thing we did is internationalization of the browser and developer tools. So they're now available in other languages. We found that 30% of the Visual Studio Code users have Visual Studio Code not in English. But developer tools never had the feature to change the language. The browser always had. So when you now change your browser to Japanese, you also have your developer tools in Japanese, which is not useful for me, but for Japanese developers. And there's whole markets that we never talk to because they only talk in a certain language with each other. And the other thing is accessibility enhancement to the browser and dev tools. So they're now accessible to screen readers. They're keyboard accessible, so you can actually tap through a flame chart rather than like having to use a mouse. That was never done before either. And that's just because it was a need for us. As Microsoft, we cannot release any software without internationalization and accessibility, because people love to sue us if we don't do that. So we needed to do that, so we put it up, and now we upstream it into the Chromium project, and any Chromium browser based on Chromium can take these things and run with them as well. One thing I really like is Elements for Code. That's something that we released 2 days ago, a new version. If you haven't seen that one yet, that's basically the Chromium developer tools inside Visual Studio Code. So instead of just writing your Sass in your editor and then going to the browser and using the inspect button to actually see what CSS is wrong and changing the colors there, you can actually do it inside the editor directly. There's no need to switch to the browser to try a few things out, and there's no need to replicate the same functionality in both places, because we have all these things based on Chromium and Node, so we can mix and match them in any way rather than like building different castles of development. What that looks like is that, so in this case now I have a JavaScript page, and I can run it and connect to Edge, and it opens the browser in the background, and then it actually goes there and I can do the screencasting. So now I've got the browser inside the editor, and I can interact with that. I can set, I can see which event handlers have been done there. Debugging is supported now, so when I actually set a breakpoint in my JavaScript, it refreshes live in the page there, and I can go back to the code directly there. So in the CSS, when I mess with the CSS, it goes to the right line in my Sass in the editor live, without me having to jump between those two things. And that's something that we're playing with right now, so if you take a look at that, please give us feedback and tell us if that's something that you want, because we think it's kind of cool, but we use it internally a lot for our developers. And subsequently, there's also a thing called the Web We Want. We tried to run one here at this event, but we didn't do it in time. So I'm talking to Henry Helvetica to do something maybe here in Toronto soon. It's basically an event where you can pitch ideas what the web should be like, what you want of the web to have, much like a Shark Tank kind of thing. And we got like a panel of judges that basically say, like, yeah, that makes sense. And the things that come to there either turn into products or get elevated back into W3C working groups where we all sitting, and you probably feel too intimidated to submit something to. So that's what that whole product, the idea is there. So in summary, the web is a diverse place, and much more diverse than we think it is. There's so many developers that you never heard of that we don't care for, and we should care for them. We have a chance to make it easier for everyone to create quality products for all end users by giving them the right tools and knowing their needs rather than like assuming their needs. And we have open source platforms with open communication channels that power the web. If you're annoyed about something in Chromium, go to the GitHub repository and file a bug. And basically, if at least you've done something, at least you've done the due diligence to basically say, I wanted this that much that I actually showed it to public. We accumulate a lot of knowledge, and why not add it to our tools to the creators of the web in context? I don't want to explain to people that an alternative text is an important thing. I'd rather have the text editor tell them while they're putting an image tag in there, you also need the alternative text or it's not valid code. Okay, it would be valid code, but why not tell them that's a terrible thing to do so they actually do it? So if you want to talk to me, I'm CodePoet or Edge DevTools on Twitter, christianheilmann.com, and everything we do has this little smiley button in there. And if you actually, if you like something or don't like something, press that thing, and it creates a screenshot. If you allow it, it actually takes the telemetry of your computer to know which browser you're using and which operating system, and you just type in your email, and it gets as a CR bug to me, and I can escalate it up to Chromium, or I can escalate it to our team. So that's what I did the last few weeks, was just going through all the things. I think my best feedback I ever heard is like, Chris, to reach you, I have to punch the happy face, and I'm not sure that's the right thing, but that's all I had. So thanks very much.